I told you. What are you gonna do?
I'm gonna find a home for this.
Jon Bernthal's Punisher has finally reached a point where it feels like Marvel knows exactly what to do with the character. After years of different versions, mixed reactions, and projects that never fully captured what makes Frank Castle so compelling, things finally seem to be falling into place. That's why it feels like the next logical step isn't another TV season or another short special. It should be a full solo movie. And with Bernthal set to appear in Spider-Man Brand New Day, Marvel has the perfect opportunity to use that appearance as the launchpad for a standalone Punisher film. Frank Castle showing up in Spider-Man Brand New Day is already exciting because it puts one of Marvel's darkest characters alongside one of its most recognizable heroes. But because Spider-Man movies are made for a much wider audience, they usually stick to a PG-13 rating. That means Frank's brutal methods will almost certainly have to be toned down. He can still be intense, but Marvel probably won't let him go all out the way fans expect. So although seeing Bernthal interact with Spider-Man will be fun, it probably won't be the place where the Punisher reaches his full potential. That is exactly why a solo movie makes so much sense afterward. Marvel can use Spider-Man Brand New Day to remind audiences who Frank Castle is and introduce him to viewers who may not have watched the Netflix series or the Disney Plus special. Then, once people are invested again, Marvel can move directly into an R-rated Punisher movie that fully embraces the violence, psychological depth, and grounded storytelling that define the character. The biggest reason this could work is because Marvel has already shown that R-rated projects have a place in the MCU now. For years, that seemed impossible because Marvel Studios focused almost entirely on family-friendly blockbusters. But everything changed after the success of Deadpool and Wolverine. That movie proved audiences are more than willing to support mature Marvel stories as long as they stay true to the characters. Because of that success, a Punisher movie no longer feels like a risky experiment. Instead, it feels like the next natural step. Marvel also doesn't need to make the movie massive. In fact, a smaller budget would probably benefit the story. Frank Castle has never been a character who needs giant CGI battles or world-ending threats. His stories work because they're grounded, personal, and incredibly intense. A lean action thriller with practical stunt work, brutal fight choreography, and a strong emotional story would fit the Punisher far better than another huge superhero spectacle. Jon Bernthal has also proven over the years that he is the perfect actor to carry that kind of movie. From the moment he debuted in Daredevil Season 2, fans immediately connected with his version of Frank Castle. He wasn't simply an unstoppable killing machine, he felt like a deeply broken man whose entire life had been destroyed. Bernthal balanced rage, grief, guilt, and vulnerability in a way that previous live-action versions never quite managed. Because of that emotional depth, audiences believed every decision Frank made, even when those decisions were horrifying. After that incredible introduction, Bernthal received his own Netflix series. While many fans enjoyed parts of it, the show also had plenty of problems. Like several of Marvel's Netflix series, it suffered from pacing issues. Every season lasted 13 episodes, even though the story didn't always have enough material to justify that length. There were great action scenes and strong performances, but a bunch of episodes felt like they were stretching the plot instead of moving it forward. The emotional moments landed, but getting there sometimes took longer than necessary. Now, things have changed again with The Punisher: One Last Kill. Instead of dragging the story out across an entire season, Marvel went in the opposite direction by making a much shorter special. This time, the character finally felt completely authentic. Bernthal even helped write the project, and that involvement really shows. Frank Castle comes across as a man pushed beyond every emotional limit, and the story explores his damaged mindset while never losing sight of the brutal action fans expect. The special quickly builds tension before throwing Frank into one relentless battle after another. Around the middle of the story, it almost transforms into a survival action movie because Frank has to fight his way through an entire building filled with enemies. The choreography is raw, violent, and incredibly satisfying. Even though there were a few complaints about some CGI effects, most reviews praised the special for understanding who Frank Castle really is. Ironically, the biggest criticism wasn't about the action or Bernthal's performance, it was that the story ended too soon. After spending years watching Punisher stories that felt too long, fans suddenly wanted more. The setup is interesting, the action is fantastic, and then it wraps up before it feels completely finished. That almost proves Marvel has finally found the right version of the character because audiences aren't asking for less Punisher anymore, they're asking for more. And that's where a solo movie becomes the perfect middle ground. A feature-length film of around 2 hours gives Marvel enough time to develop the story without falling into the pacing problems of a long television season. Frank's emotional journey would have room to breathe, the villains could receive proper development, and the action sequences could build naturally toward an explosive finale. It solves both problems at once because it avoids unnecessary filler while also giving the story more space than a short special. The comic books already provide plenty of material that Marvel could adapt for this movie. One obvious direction would be finishing Frank's conflict with Ma Nucci. That storyline remains one of the Punisher's most memorable comic arcs because it constantly escalates the war between Frank and organized crime. Judith Light has already been connected to that role, so Marvel could easily expand the rivalry into a complete feature film. It would give audiences a personal conflict rather than another generic battle against anonymous criminals. Another fantastic option would be adapting Barracuda. Comic readers know Barracuda as one of the Punisher's most dangerous enemies because he's every bit as ruthless as Frank, but enjoys violence in a completely different way. Unlike Castle, Barracuda has no moral code whatsoever. That creates an interesting contrast because Frank believes he's punishing criminals while Barracuda simply embraces chaos. Watching Bernthal face a villain like that could produce one of the MCU's most intense rivalries. Marvel could also introduce the Russian, another classic Punisher villain. Fans who remember the comics know just how physically intimidating he is. A live-action adaptation could create some incredible action scenes because Frank would have to rely on strategy rather than brute strength. The Russian has always been larger than life, but he can still fit into a grounded movie if Marvel focuses on practical action instead of excessive CGI. Another comic storyline worth adapting is Welcome Back, Frank. That story perfectly balances dark humor, brutal violence, and Frank's relentless mission against organized crime. And that's that for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one. And don't forget to like this video, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to the channel to stay in the loop. And if you want, you can share your thoughts about this video in the comment section down below.